Hello, my beautiful humans, and welcome to the Becoming Human 2.0 Unscripted podcast. I am your host, Paul McFadden, and it's my mission to create global impact by cultivating real connection through having authentic conversations that matter. Today, I'm joined by my special guest, Stephanie Brandolini, another amazing human residing in Vancouver, Canada. In this episode, we discuss how one can manifest their dream life through faith, connection, and creativity. And of course, this conversation was completely unscripted. Here's a quick peek and then we'll jump right into the conversation, so enjoy. And remember, we're all here to discover, awaken, and evolve together.
When you show up knowing that you're already worthy, it's a whole different ballgame. And that frequency reflects in the world too. And it's not about, I don't like to fake it till you make it. You're not faking anything. You're showing up as your real self. And that authenticity is what's going to bring you what you really, maybe not what you want, but what you really need and what's really meant for you.
Stephanie, welcome.
Thanks, Paul, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to diving into this conversation and seeing where it takes us.
I am too, because I don't even know what I'm going to ask you first. No, we talked just prior to going live. And I guess as I was thinking about where to take the conversation, there's a whole litany of topics we could discuss. But I think I like to start the conversation off with asking the question, who is Stephanie?
Oh, that is the question, isn't it? A previous version of me might have started with what I do and all that stuff. And I've really learned on my journey, it's not so much what you do, it's who you're being as you're doing the thing. I am a very inspirational and spiritual and motivated being to really express the wealth of my experience in this lifetime. I have been through a lot, I've learned a lot, gained a lot of wisdom, and I'm here to share what it's like to overcome your darkest parts of yourself, the darkest times of your life, times when you think you can't even go on or maybe don't even want to go on. And please share that in what I'm most passionate about, which is writing and storytelling and helping people build their dream lives. That might sound like a naive thing, but I truly believe and know, and I'm experiencing what it's like to manifest your dreams. And there was a time when I almost let that get suppressed out of me. The world will make you think your dreams can't come true, but they can and they will. And you got to do work for it, of course. But the most work is maintaining the belief that it's possible. And when you have that belief, it doesn't matter what's going on, it will happen because it will. That knowing that's beyond the shadows of any doubts that are going to try to rise up and stop you. Yeah, I don't know how that's like a nutshell of who I am, but I am also, of course, a writer and I run a couple businesses and stuff. But yeah, it's all with that intention of sharing experience and helping people create their dream life.
I love it. And thank you for the summary and sharing your passion too, because I was going to unpack all that, but you did a little bit for me.
Yeah.
But I love the idea and the notion, actually not really notion, just the drive to have the experience and sharing the experience. I share with individuals many times when I'm talking or speaking at a conference or just sometimes it's a conversation that really the human being is here to have the full range of emotional experiences. Everything from love, joy, and everything down to hate, everything in between. The challenge that we have is that we get stuck in the emotion and we sometimes allow the emotion to define who we are versus let the experience happen, pass through it, make some decisions about what was I supposed to learn in that experience, or what did I learn in that experience, or whatever that is, and then either shift yourself so that you don't so that the experience is different, or maybe you create opportunities for to continue having that same experience, like you were talking about manifesting and believing and the knowing. And I think those are interesting concepts too. I see a difference between belief and knowing. There is a
Yeah. I
difference, but
I know you know that. But I'd be curious to hear your definition actually.
yeah. Oh yeah. So I look at belief and knowing as they work together. They are complementary in some respects. Whenever we're trying to change something, there's a desire, there's a vision, and then there comes in this belief, right? I want to do this thing. I'm making a decision. This is what I want to do, or where I want to go, and I believe it's possible. In belief, the faith is believing in the unknown. You are trying to predict the future, but you can't see the outcome. But what happens is, if our belief is strong enough, we start taking action or doing activities or behaviors that would take us on the path towards the thing that we desire. And as we go along the way, if we have, say, positive reinforcement, something happens, something changes for you, you start to build evidence for, then the belief shifts from belief to knowing, because you know it to be true because you've received. And I think a lot of times belief and knowing can be really tricky for people because we believe certain things. And if we don't get the evidence, we might stop doing the things we're doing.
Hmm.
Then the belief wanes, and then the knowing, then the evidence never happens, and the manifestation or the change never happens because we stop believing, and the believing then impacted what we do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's an awesome way to say it because yeah, like it's yeah, belief leads to the knowing through aligned action.
It's a great way to encapsulate that. And so you were saying that in a former life you would have done this. So tell me a little bit about life. You were born in Canada?
Yeah, I'm in Vancouver,
Yeah.
Canada. I'm yeah, born and raised here.
Mm.
I've traveled a lot in my life. My mom is from England, so I'd go there like every summer as a kid. I actually had a bit of a British accent when I was a kid. I didn't really realize I was watching some home movies recently, and I was like, oh my God, I had a British accent because I would go there every summer, right? And I actually I had a stint living in the States. I lived in Florida for a couple years. I was working at Disney World
Mm.
in
That
Epcot,
sounds
in the
fun.
Canadian Pavilion. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. And the reason why I am so passionate about overcoming and even when I don't feel like it, like I don't that I have to, because I don't like the word have to. You get to
Mm.
keep going with this mission because people need to overcome or else they get stuck in that shadowland of doubt. And I know what the shadowland of doubt is, that former version of me that would have just maybe listed off accolades and stuff and not really gone into who I really am. And there's more to it. There's always more to it with everyone, but I used to be very just unsure of myself and not confident and who am I to really go for my dreams kind of thing. And
Mm.
I used to really just not be able to articulate myself very well either. And
Mm.
that's really frustrating having because I have an infinite imagination. I have a lot going on up here, and there's a lot that I want to bring to the world when it comes to stories and film and all that kind of stuff, but it would just get stuck because I don't know, not confident and things like that. But also, the thing that I've overcome, well, one of the biggest things was I was really stuck in an eating disorder for like many years, like 15 years.
Mm.
I was stuck in this dark shadowland of that.
Mm.
And what I discovered in overcoming that was just this drive to actually connect, which was very ironic because I used to think that I didn't really like people. People didn't like me. I was just meant to write in my tower, my fortress of
Mm.
solitude, and never see anybody. But I'm a big believer in God, and I believe that He saved me from that eating disorder situation to show me that it wasn't about the food, it wasn't about weight or even what I looked like. It was about like this weird thing I wanted to like control my life. And
Mm,
I used it as an excuse to push away the world and push away people, and had this idea, it's if you never let anyone to get too close, you'll never be hurt. But little did I know, I was hurting myself way more in the process. You're the own worst enemy kind of thing. So
mhm.
connection is really what I think we're all here for. Even people that say they don't like people, why don't you like people? Who hurt you kind
Yes.
of thing, or if are you hurting yourself? Because it's a
There's
natural,
always that. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
And
always that. So it's always the question of when someone has that reaction, it's the first question that comes to mind for me too. Is who hurt you? And people will share their traumas. Typically, some people will. They'll share their trauma and the things that have happened to them because they maybe ask themselves that question, or maybe they got some therapy. I don't know. But I wonder sometimes. I challenge people sometimes some of the belief systems, and so I am a status quo breaker. I break molds. So I'm just gonna say it because I find it interesting. Having done some of that work, I think what was the most impactful thing that was said to me and the most maddening thing that was ever said to me was you are not responsible for the things that happen to people that hurt you in the past, but you are
mm,
responsible for your healing.
yeah.
And pain does not have to equate to suffering. And if you want to know who your dream killer is, look in the mirror.
I know, yeah.
And that's a hard one to digest. But it's almost like saying, whatever happened, and that nobody's taking that away. But then on the same token, once you became aware that's what happened to you, you have a choice to either stay and suffer with what happened or decide what you're going to learn from that situation and then move forward and move on. And that's an easier thing that's said than done, obviously, but it is a reality that it's hard to wrap your head around that. It sounds like what happened with you, based on what you said, and I want you to tell the story because you are a storyteller, and I'm going to ask you some questions about
Yeah.
storytelling too. But I heard you say connection, and I heard you it's spirituality. So
Mhm.
you're so connection. I'm assuming with others, and then spirituality, your connection with God.
Yeah, connection with God too, but yeah, I guess I didn't really think about it like that. But yeah, connection could be, yeah, with people, and spiritual connection, yes, with God. And I believe, like I often like we're all multifaceted, right? And I always talk about how there's facets of yourself that as you go on your healing journey or whatever, everything is a healing journey, really. Or
Mm.
as you go on your journey, especially if you're like building something like or building a better life for yourself, building a team, building a business, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be things that come up along the way, parts of yourself that are like afraid and don't want to go forward, and like parts of those, because overcoming trauma and stuff is not like a one and done thing. Even you're like, oh, I'm doing great, there will likely be, and I don't want to like make it a negative thing because it doesn't have to be, but like there will likely be parts that come up again at different levels. So someone once said this and it's very true, it's like another level, another devil. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a bad scary thing, because sometimes, because I remember that an older version of myself would have probably heard that, been like, okay, what's the point in even doing it? What's the point if you're just going to keep coming up against things? That is life. Even if you're not doing anything, you're going to come up against things. So
Right.
it's like those past parts and things, like they just need that connection and connection with self too. It's you got
Hmm.
to learn to love yourself throughout this whole thing. Because I used to have a really big people pleasing thing that I got to get over, because like you have to, or else you'll just be giving your energy away without being like replenished yourself. So connecting to self so that you can be like resourced to connect with the world, and all the time you're connected to God really, but there's those moments where you get really quiet, meditate, go to nature, whatever it is like people do to get to that moment of stillness. It doesn't even have to be still. Like I'm working out in the gym and I feel connected to God. So I don't know. I think it's just it's whatever brings you that kind of feeling of, yeah, maybe being connected to the present moment. That's what it all comes down to, too. Dealing with like this eating disorder thing in my past. It was never really, like I said, about the food. There was a lot of like anxiety and depression things that I got to overcome.
Hmm.
And all that really comes from not being in the present moment. You're either like mostly worried about the future, or like weighing something from your past is weighing on you, but you're either one of those, you're not here, you're somewhere else, right? So
Yeah.
only really here now is where the power comes from.
True that, very true. I share with people sometimes if something I read, um, Ram Dass, and it's the only moment that matters is right now. And that all of our experiences that we've ever experienced, everything from the past, lead to right now, this moment. So anything that's ever happened to you has shaped and shifted your behaviors and your decisions and choices, but you're right here, right? And if none of those things had happened, you may not be sitting in front of me, and I may not be sitting in front of you to even have this conversation. So it's interesting, to think about just experiences and all the things that situations that we've been through. What was it that shifted in you, right? Because you were having an experience for a while, and then something shifted. What was it that shifted?
Yeah, honestly, it was like a lot that led up to like me being like, okay, I'm done with this eating disorder stuff. Honestly, though, there was one big shift, and it was I was dating a guy, and I was at a better place than I'd ever been, really. But I remember it was so very simple. I like didn't want to be weird going on a date with him to go to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of things that had got led up to that, but it was just that thing, and it was like a simple little click. I don't want to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key because I was forced into hospitals, forced into therapy, that kind of stuff. And that never helps. The person has to want it. And so often the
Yeah.
wanting can only really come when you get to a really low point or maybe even just a weird point where you're like, I want to go on a date and don't be weird. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it just showed me like I wasn't willing to go through the rest of my life, like overthinking going out for a meal or whatever. It's like, but
Mm-hmm.
again, like underneath all that was like, yeah, like that. It's, oh, I actually do want to connect with people. That was the big revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so true. We don't change anything until I guess the fear of changing is less than the fear of staying the same. Right.
Hmm.
And so people won't change unless they really want to. They have to want to do it. And even after they want to do it, they still have to have the willingness to take the steps, right?
Hmm.
And move forward one step at a time and not try to eat the whole pie at the same time, if you will.
Oh my God,
Um,
I know.
oh, that's interesting. And I know that a lot of people will hear this and may have heard something similar, but I think I think sometimes it's nice to hear. It's good to hear something 10 different times, 10 different ways, and 10 different people, how we can overcome things and then transform ourselves, in another version, if you will. But then also look back and reflect on what were the most important things that came out of it. I wanted connection, myself, with others, spiritually. I wanted to be more present in the moment. So it's more about the presence and then having the experiences, but then live your life that way. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it really embodied that. I think that's what I find that refreshing and fascinating in many respects because a lot of people do a lot of talking. And there's a lot of people out there even talking now about how, oh, if you want to transform, you got to do these different things, but they're not doing those things. They're
I know.
talking
You could
about
walk
them.
your own talk.
So they're not walking their own talk. And what is it that you do to stay so grounded?
Yeah, literally getting grounded. Like I'm blessed to live right by the beach and right by this big park that's in here in Vancouver. So I have a spot I go to. I have a
Mhm.
couple, but there's one in particular that I actually found in the pandemic. Like
Mm.
the pandemic actually, like I was very grateful for that because I was already wanting people to stay away from me. But no, but I had the 6 foot rule before it was cool. But again, that also taught me the value of true connection. Because at first I was like, because in the pandemic, I was like, I wasn't in the eating disorder stuff, but I was still, I just want to be alone and do my work. I was halfway like working with a team of people in the job I was doing. I was managing people and stuff in the visual effects realm. And then the whole pandemic happened, and I was like, yeah, we get to work from home. But yeah, after 3 months of not seeing anybody, I was like, okay, now I know what they mean when they say being human is connecting with people. Oh, you're being told to stay home. Now I want to go out and see people.
Hmm. Yeah.
But being grounded in, yeah, nature definitely helps. Like I go to this spot in the woods that I kind of found during the pandemic. It's cold right now to do that, but I
Mm.
would go there for like hours. I would take my laptop and my journals and everything, and I wrote several scripts in that wood in the woods, and then a couple of my
Mm.
books. Like all my books and stuff some of it has been written there, but
Hmm.
and when I talk about like anxiety and stuff, it still comes up, but
Sure.
like ground myself in just faith. Faith has really kept me grounded. Talking about belief and knowing, faith is in that realm as well because it's like different than knowing. It's different than belief. And it depends what you have faith in, of course.
Sure.
I'm talking about God, but that universal other like higher power that if people are listening to this podcast, I bet you they believe in something like that. So I'm not speaking to people who don't.
They may or may not. So but yeah,
Yeah,
but you're
if
right.
you
So
don't, I'd actually be curious. Grounding in this like faith that that you're doing everything you can to make your dreams come true, you know?
hmm
And grounding, breathing really does help. Like your breath is what connects you to, again, connection. Breath connects you to
So
self,
now,
connects you to the
hmm
present moment because like only in when you're breathing, you're like, oh, okay, I'm here, I'm now. And there was something actually that I grounded into yesterday is just breathing and like breathing in the miracle that it actually is to be alive. Like every breath is actually a miracle, and like we miss those things. We're rushing around, getting things done, and like you're saying, don't eat the whole pie at once. That's definitely true because like, I'm like passionate about several, like a lot of things. I'm doing a couple different things right now, and I know that I'm meant to do that because I can handle it, but it's not all at once. It's like in a flow of this is what I'm meant to be doing, but being grounded in all the things is it's not hard really. It's just it's not something that people are taught really. Like I wish they
Mm.
taught grounding in school. Imagine that. That would be amazing. Instead of like long division, we're teaching grounding
Oh,
today.
yeah. That would be, they teach, so for some, in some of the schools here, they'll teach meditation.
Mm,
They'll teach some grounding. Not, I won't say in all the public schools. It's not a public school thing, but certainly in some of the private schools. There used to be a school here called Blue School, and it was started by the Blue Man Group, which is an entertainment
oh, I
group.
know those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And they started the Blue School, and it was, at the time, it was really innovative. I'm not sure if it's still open. I would imagine that it is, but they started a school in New York, and I know that much. And I know that they were bringing in different practices and taking a very unconventional way to education, and actually a more, I would say, a more ancient way to
Mhm.
educate and give people experiences, to give children experiences in the learning process, which they had some really good outcomes. But I wish, like you just said, I wish that was something that was just a standard. So much has changed. I look at things, my lens now is looking at things through the ancient lens, like ancient society lens. And that's mostly because I feel like there was a lot of clues that were left behind around this human experience and how we were meant to live, maybe. I'm not going to say need or should live because like you, I don't like using certain words in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
And need and should are words that I'm actively, intentionally removing because
Yeah.
I don't think, because I think when you put that parameter on things, it's easy for the human brain to push back and say, I don't want to hear. If I need to do it, then I don't want to listen to you. If I should do
Yeah,
it,
it's
then
like rebellious, like
I
whatever. I don't know what it is, but it's like,
don't know what it is either, but I think that has something to do with it from a neuroscience perspective. But when I think about when I hear it, I think I have the same adverse reaction, which is really interesting. So I try to take it out of my vocabulary. But I think it would serve us to take a look at the past. And I'm not the first person to say this, but I think that I did a live back in November, and I think it was around the beginning of November. And I made an observation, and I came on. I said, it appears that many people in our societies want someone or something else to change the world for them.
yeah.
And it would seem to me we'd be better served if we went inward and started looking at what was going on in the inner world, because the world without is a direct reflection of the world within. So if we're seeing chaos and pain and disconnection and division and all these different things that we're seeing, that's something's going on inside of us that is allowing us to be on the same frequency with it. And then that's how we show up in the world. But if we shift what's going on inside of us, we're going to show up to the outside world differently, which is then
Mhm.
going to help us better create the experience that we want because we show up to the world differently. And if everybody did that, we would all show up to the world differently. If we just stopped and, like you said earlier, find some stillness and do some inner reflection, sit with ourselves. I asked somebody that one time in the podcast. I said, "When's the last time you sat with yourself?"
Mm.
And that sparked an entire conversation around consciousness. It was a great conversation, but how many people ask you that? When's the last time you sat in stillness?
Mm.
That's not a
I'm
question
gonna
that.
pose that question actually. That hasn't been easy for me, having a lot going on, and that was also a bit of a, I think that's a thing in society. I remember even being told at a job, it was like I worked up the courage to ask for a raise,
Mm.
and I was like, there was a lot that went into that, and I was told, no, you got to prove yourself a bit more, and I did, but that was like. I don't know. It was one of those things. I was like negotiating a thing. Like it was, they'd given me a bit of a raise, but I was like, because I had asked for too little when I started there. I had a whole thing about knowing my worth, and
Hmm.
yeah, eventually it all worked out. But it just showed me like how much you do need to prove yourself in a certain way. But when you show up knowing that you're already worthy, it's a whole different ball game, and that
Yes.
frequency like reflects in the world too. And it's not about, I don't like the fake it till you make it. You're not faking anything. You're like
Hmm.
you're showing up as your real self, and that authenticity is what's going to bring you what you really maybe want, maybe not what you want, but what you really need and what's really meant for you. Because that's something that I've come up against sometimes is like, I think I want it this way, but then is what you want and what you need the same thing? Sometimes it is, and that's awesome. But sometimes what you want is not what you need, and
Yeah.
yeah, you just get to trust that like what you're being guided to and shown along. This is why faith has helped me because, when I try to figure it out myself too much, I overcomplicate it. I think we do this naturally as humans. Like
Hmm.
the world, like I said, tries to like puts this pressure on us to prove ourselves and work hard and all this stuff. And I'm not saying hard work doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it's a misdirection because over like hard work is not, who wants to work hard? What if you could
Mm.
work in flow and work in a way that's like it's alignment, and I don't want to say easy because that's not the right word for it either, but it's like more easeful than the world makes it out to be.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought you just brought up. And 'cause I've had this conversation a few times, and I'm curious now. It almost feels like we need to refresh everybody on vocabulary. We need to have a common we need to have a common meaning for different words in our language. Easy or simple, right? I think
Mhm.
that a lot of times, sometimes the things that we know would better serve us is it's simple because it's an easy because the thought comes to us like that, like the solution is right there. But
Mhm.
then it's a complicated process. And the process, just because the process might be difficult doesn't make it hard. It's just that there's complexity to it
Mhm.
and there's things to navigate and adjustments you have to make. But if you can find the joy in it or the bigger reason why that we're going this route in the first place, it makes it, I'm not going to say enjoyable, but it makes it timeless, effortless, rich. It's got a richness to it. It's almost like like you said, in a flow state where you're focused on the outcome, not the steps to get there. You understand what I mean? It's like when you get in the flow state, you're not thinking about the work, you're just doing it. And the answers and the connections are just happening. They're just coming to you. And you lose track of time. And it feels effortless, even though you're putting in effort intentionally. But it feels effortless because you have all the answers and all the resources available to you at your fingertips. So it is interesting that things feel hard. So we don't want to do them. But on the same token, it's not hard. I don't know if easy is like I said, I don't know if you said there's the easiness to it. There's an ease, there's a flow to it. And how do you find your flow?
Yeah, starting with getting grounded, because sometimes,
Mm.
like when I was getting into being an entrepreneur for one thing, and
Mhm.
then doing multiple things, there was this kind of old pattern that was coming up around, okay, I gotta rush and get it all done and do it all, like, and this anxiety started coming up, and I'm like, okay, I'm not, that doesn't mean the anxiety has me. I don't have the anxiety. The anxiety is just coming up to show me where I get to let go of it more, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, getting into that is just being intentional about, for example, when I go to and do my writing, like sometimes it just comes and I just have a spur of the moment thing, but often I go to the woods and I'm going to the woods to write for a bit. And if it's going into creating or like finish working on a book or something, I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this scene and also see where it goes. Like I have an intentionality about it, but I'm open to the possibility of where the creativity takes me. And similar with like work or something, or like when I'm like engaging and reaching out and having calls with people about business, it's okay, this is going into this with this intention to connect, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
and just for the best possible outcome for everyone involved. That's what I usually go into everything with.
Mm-hmm.
And just it's yeah, flow. It's just when yeah, when you're not really thinking about what you're doing, you're just doing it. Because overthinking is something I had to really overcome as well. And
Mm-hmm.
still am a little bit sometimes. But it's just like and being present too, because as we're talking here, things are coming up that we didn't, it was unscripted. We didn't plan anything. But yeah, and God helps me a lot with flow. There's still times when I get stuck and stuff. Everyone's going to get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing that, for example, a book or something, like if I'm stuck somewhere in a book or a screenplay, I'm like, okay, I know I meant to write this. I like, and you have to come back to this. Do you even want to continue this? Yes, the answer is always yes. But it's like, what is the bigger picture kind of thing? What is the meaning of this story? What is the purpose of it? Like getting grounded in the purpose of what you're doing, like activates the flow in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When did you figure out your purpose?
I'm still like refining stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I think it was when I finished my first screenplay when I realized that I can take pain and turn it into purpose. I can take like all that's going on in here and turn it into something that's tangible, that's real and make something out of it. And getting into being an entrepreneur in business and stuff with doing what I do with helping people like create income to
Mm-hmm.
build their own dream and everything. It expanded it to a bit more from my own writing, my own stuff, to like how can I help people realize their own dreams by sharing with them like different vehicles to bring them in income, but also grow in personal development, spiritual development, because it all goes together for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna succeed building any kind of anything if you're not growing. And this is something that said timelessly, but entrepreneurship is basically personal development with a paycheck.
No, I love that. I love that analogy because I share with people that purpose, generally speaking, for every human being is about growing and giving, growing yourself and
Yeah.
giving to others. That how you choose to do that, how you choose to grow, and how you choose to give is unique to you in your experience. And so, but you just said it, the growth. If you're not growing, you couldn't possibly that be that great at whatever the experience is. I mean, there might be a passion, but you have to grow into the passion. Um, But then the giving piece, it could look a lot of different ways. You're helping people, and that's one way to give. Some people give monetarily. People do a lot of things to give, but I think what I find people get confused about sometimes is there's all this language right now around finding purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Literally,
Find
there's a book on the, oh my God, it's right here. This book,
yes,
Purpose
and
Awakening.
there's
This guy
about
kind of
50
reminds
of
me
them.
of you, actually.
Uh, yeah, there's about 100,000 books on purpose, and I think
Yeah.
that we're spending a lot of time looking for it. And I wonder if it's not that we don't need to look for it. We just need to reconnect to it. We need to realign with what it is. I think innately, even what you're talking about, you got to grow. I would say most people innately feel like they got to grow. Okay, but how you do that, you're looking for the how, not for the what. You already know what you need to do. Got to grow. And there's this call to give, right? So give could be connecting, but it's like, how do I give? What am I supposed to give? I think that the question is more about the how versus the what. So I think we all innately probably in some ways, not consciously, know purpose is something, right? We have to do something, but the question is the what and how do we do that? Interesting. What do you, because you work in this personal development field too, like you're developing people, and I think, what's your assessment on where we are in humankind?
Yeah. interesting question because like being a storyteller and everything, like I do not get stuck, but I'm like in my own space a lot and like in this world of growth and development and stuff like that. But then I see the news and I'm like, oh, the world is not all about growth, like in the global sense, but there's a lot going on that seems crazy right now, and it is, but it's been like this since the beginning of time. I think we're just like more aware of it because we can see more of it and stuff, and we see all these things, and who knows what to believe and what exactly not to believe. Some of it could be doctors, some of it's fake news, I don't know, but we're at a time of chaos and creation. And I think there's great opportunity to shift, as we've been talking about. Like, I think a lot of people are also awakening to spirituality, to wanting to know where do we come from, why are we here, the purpose thing and everything. And I feel like it's like a pendulum shift kind of thing. Like we went one direction one time, we went super another direction, and now it's can we settle down into a happy medium? The word balance is an interesting thing. I do believe you can have balance, but what does that really mean? The word's always in flux, right? It's not like a static balance. It's like a
Right.
kind of flow balance where, yeah, things are moving, things are happening. And that comes back to grounding. Can you be ground into, okay, what is the reality of what's going on? And like, how can we take what's going on to be better, to give better? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anyone right now. No, I don't like to use the word fixing, but we're always going to be growing no matter what. And we're always going to be changing no matter what. So you might as well be growing. And
Right.
like with the way the world is right now, like it is a time ripe for opportunity. There's a lot of things that are causing fear and I don't know, a lot of things that are bringing out a lot of the worst in people. But there's also at the same time, there's the best coming out of people. It's interesting. Like there's never been more poverty, yet more wealth. There's never been more people going after their dreams and having an amazing time, and then people in poverty having a lot of fear. It's like that's what I mean. There's a medium that I think is coming out of this, but it's going to be like a dynamic medium. It's because
Yeah.
like we talked before when we got on this about a dichotomy, and I like to see life is like a dichotomous dance with darkness and light, and neither like darkness and all that kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. And I'm not saying darkness is the right thing, but we do need to know there's a lot of scary stuff going on in the world, but there's also people are seeing like yes, we go through these dark times. Yes, we go through this stuff, but there's also light always, and the light will always beat the darkness. But I think this is something I wrote in that first script I was saying, only those who've walked through darkness can wield the light.
Right.
Because you have to know what it's like to really be in your own version of what darkness is, the dark night of the soul, they call it, in the hero's journey, and rising out of that. It's whatever's going on, like the horrible fires in LA, the wars, this and that. It's like, it's awful, but it's also a chance to be like, okay, this is happening. Where can we go from here? Like a peace, is that possible? I think it is always. If we connect and come to some kind of mutual thing where we can just live our best lives. And some people might think that might sound naive, but why does it have to be? Why do we have to complicate things so much? And who's right, who's wrong, who's this, who's that? Can we all just be and be at peace with that? I think it comes down to being at peace with yourself first, like we were talking about on the
You
inside.
just said it. Yeah, you got to be at peace with yourself first. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think that you were talking about balance, and I think there's a balancing act, right? A balancing process. Even the happiest person in the world will tell you that they're not happy 24/7. They
Yeah.
experience all the emotions. The thing is that when they find that they're in a state that they don't want to be in, he has tools to shift his state so he can come back to happiness. So it's almost like, but you have to experience what sadness is in order to know the difference between sadness and happiness.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
Inside Out, that movie Inside Out did a great job of
mhm,
showing the necessity of sadness.
yeah, but all those things, even like you said, even when darkness shows us, reveals what we need to be aware of,
Hmm.
and then we have to make a decision what we want to do with that. We can either let that awareness that's been created become us, or we can let that inform us and then make a decision to make a choice on who we want to be in that moment, which is it's a nuanced statement of way to say it, but we have choice in all of this if we just take the time to see the situation for what it is, and then taking the data and then make a decision about, okay, how do I want to show up? What's this teaching me, and how do I want to be? Again, back to your being. We do a lot of doing, but we do
Mm.
a lot less being, and I think we need to shift that equation around and do a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
more being, and then do less, but be more.
Yeah, do less, be more. That's we got to put that on a hat.
Yeah, I got all these quotes are coming. That is definitely something that's that we gotta. I'm gonna make sure I make that a highlight.
Yeah, yeah.
Do less, be more. Wow. Screenwriter, author. Tell me about some of the stuff you've written.
Yeah, I started out writing TV scripts and movies because that's honestly like where I got my storytelling passion. I'm a big reader too, but I've always had a dream of writing a book, having it become a TV series or something, or writing something to become something that's seen on the screen. And
Mm,
I didn't go for that dream for a long time because I got this idea in my head that you couldn't make it's very hard to make money writing, and it's such a long shot. You're better off. What is it? Someone said you have a better chance of winning the World Series than making it or something as a screenwriter. And I was like, I let that kind of stuff get to me for way too long, but it was just a
yeah.
calling that I couldn't not do it. And I actually, so the writing world has been interesting lately because of the writer strikes in Hollywood and everything. And
Hmm.
I'm still actively pursuing that in a lot of ways, but I also shifted into writing books because the opportunity just came around. And I had my first co-author book published in the end of 2023, Womanhood, Identity to Intimacy and Everything in Between. It was like a co-author book with I did with a bunch of other women, all about sharing stories about overcoming things that happen on this journey of womanhood. And it's good for men too, if you want to understand women better, but that was first book I had my first work that got published and my first international best-selling author title came from that book. So
Awesome.
that like really propelled me into okay, like I am an international best-selling author now. Okay, let's go.
Mm,
Then at the end of last year, October actually, it came out October 1st, my first novel, and it's called Bridging the Digital Divide.
Bridging the digital divide. Okay.
Yeah, and it was it was actually funny. It was inspired a lot by the writer strikes and by the rise of AI in
Mm,
world and in creativity, especially because there was a lot of fear amongst writers of okay, are these bots going to take our jobs? Are they going to start writing everything for us? And like, what does that mean? And like, how is that even creativity anymore? Like you were talking about humanity and then technology rising. Like, where does that bridge exist? Does that exist? And that's what I
mm,
explore in this story because I wanted to show that, like, don't let it overtake us, of course, but we can work with it for it to be a tool to help us produce more and help us, like, you can do more and be less. Oh, no, sorry. Be less, be more with this because
yeah.
not saying the AI is going to do the work for you, but it can help you like unspool a lot more ideas. Like I have a lot of ideas. I like talk into my thing. I'm like, hell, help me expand this a little bit. And then of course I write it myself, but it's a tool, it's a helper. And it's also a healing journey, this whole book too, because it's about this eccentric, intuitive TV showrunner who is forced to work with this AI by her budget conscious board of directors. And at first she's hating it. This is like a blasphemy to creativity and stuff. But she starts to work with it and it prompts her into this spiritual memory regression
Mm,
where she unearths this spiritual power she has to heal herself and others. So I wanted to show that there's a lot to AI that doesn't have to be fearful and there's a lot of possibility with it. But of course, be grounded in who you are as a human while you're using it.
yeah, I know I was sharing with you right before we came on about this idea behind becoming human 2.0 and talking about podcast. And I'm a former IT person, so I've had I was an early adopter in just about everything technology, which was an awesome thing. There is when I'm with you when it comes to thinking about use the technology as the tool, but be grounded in who you are and in what you're called to do, and don't lose yourself to it. And
Mm.
I would say that we're at a fantastic moment in the history of humanity where we have created something that on some levels many people would say think a human being. And of course there are a lot of scientists, neuroscientists that say, well, it's not actually true. We have the greatest computer within our own self, in our own system, but we just don't know how to use it. And we could allow technology to take over all those functions, or we could use technology as a tool, put some boundaries around that, and develop our own potential and really figure out who we are as humans and what we have the capacity and potential to do, and then step into those things purposefully, intentionally, maybe integrating some practices that are new, maybe integrating some practices and spiritual beliefs that are old. It could be a combination of many things, but it's an interesting time. And I think that we're going to wait. I'm going to have to wait and see what humanity does with everything. That's going to be the question. Do we have enough information about ourselves to make the most effective decision?
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. That's where it comes. And that's why I think it's happening now. Because even before this, it's not like it just happened overnight. This has been like things have been going on
Mm-hmm.
for many years to lead up to people realizing what's going on. And a lot of people don't even realize what's going on. Um, and there's lots underneath the scenes that maybe we'll never know. But I think that there's been like a conscious awakening happening to prepare for all this stuff that's happening. Because you do need to be grounded in yourself and in spirit and in your purpose. And then when these like new things and chances to evolve and stuff come up, we can take them and like run with them in a certain way that is grounded, that's not, okay, here's this new shiny thing, let's see what it's, you can have that foundation of being grounded in yourself, knowing yourself, and there's nothing the world can throw at you if, that is going to screw you up or anything if you know that.
Wow. I'm looking at the time and I realize that we are into this conversation.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I'd love to pause here. I'd love to have you back and continue the conversation, see where that goes. There's a lot of areas that we didn't even go that I think it would be cool to talk about. So particularly around bridging the gap with the technology thing, I think that's an interesting conversation that I see happening more and more every
Yeah.
day. And I'd love to continue that conversation too. I'll have to have you come back and do a part two.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a feeling. I'm like, I don't think we're gonna get through everything. And yeah. Yeah, there's
You
always
never.
to unpack, but
There's always lots to unpack, and you never know where it's going to go. And even still, we'll get together next time, and then I won't remember where we left off, and we'll just start a new conversation, and maybe we'll
yeah,
get there anyway, because I think certain things will just be innately available to us. So,
yeah.
but
We'll
look,
start off bridging the gap from where we were now. The
I,
Bridging the Digital Divide was the book, so
Bridget
bridging.
did. Yep. Great. We'll drop all that in all the episode notes, all your socials and links to the book and all that kind of stuff, and everybody will have access to that. I guess we'll just wrap it up. And the last question I want to ask you is, thinking about our conversation, what's the one main point or main takeaway you'd love for people to have on their forefront in their conscious awareness right now?
Yeah, just know that whatever is calling to you, you're listening to this podcast for a certain reason. The human 2.0 kind of movement resonates with you. You're on a path, you're on a trajectory for growth, for evolution, for becoming your highest self. And that highest self thing too is, let's be honest, I don't know if we ever actually get there, but it's like the pursuit of it and
Mm,
enjoying the moment of becoming. Yes, know that there's like this outcome, but the journey of it is incredible. And Ferris Bueller said this, if you don't slow down, you're gonna miss some things. So
that's
like
right.
like like it can feel like, oh, like I want to get there when it's, but I guarantee if you don't take the time to really enjoy where you're going, when you get there, you're not gonna enjoy it. And
That's
it's like,
100% true.
and whatever you're going through, whatever you maybe are coming up against, or if you're struggling, just know you can overcome it. You were designed to overcome it. Like that thing that might be your worst thing or whatever, like you were designed to overcome that. And I guarantee you, when you do, it'll give you the fuel that you've been needing all along to keep going and break through into something greater than you can imagine at this moment.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me today in this conversation. I look forward to the opportunity to reconnect again
Yeah.
in the near future and have you back on the show. And with that, I would say thank you and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for listening. And I always like to sign off with, may the force of faith be with you all.
May the force of faith be with you all. I love it. All right. Take care.
Bye.